Hello everyone, before we start, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin.
Story 1. The Road Behind Cedar Pines. I've always been a night walker. It started as a way to clear my head after long shifts at work, and soon it became a habit I couldn't break. Around 10 or 11 p.m., when most people were winding down or asleep, I'd lace up my sneakers, put in my earbuds, and walk through my neighborhood in Cedar Pines, a quiet suburb about 40 miles outside of Denver, Colorado. The town looked almost peaceful at night. The air smelled like pine and asphalt. Porch lights glowed in neat rows down the street, and the hum of distant cars on the highway was the only real noise. I'd walk for an hour, sometimes more, just letting the silence sink in. But 3 months ago, something changed. And now, every time I step outside at night, my hands shake before I even lock the door. It started on a Thursday, early spring, still chilly enough that I could see my breath. I'd taken my usual route, down Birch Lane, past the elementary school, through the stretch of road that curves behind the old Cedar Pines Nature Reserve. The reserve was fenced off, abandoned after a wildfire burned part of it a few years back. I always hated that part. There were no houses, just trees and a single flickering streetlight. But I'd walked it dozens of times before, so I didn't think much of it. Halfway down the road, my music cut off. My phone screen flashed, low battery. I slipped it into my pocket, figuring I'd finish the walk in the silence. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. At first, I thought it was an echo, mine bouncing off the trees. But when I stopped walking, the sound didn't stop. It paused. Then, after a few seconds, it started again. Slow, dragging steps, crunching on gravel, coming from behind me. I turned around, expecting to see someone, maybe another late-night walker or a kid cutting through the road. But the path was empty. Just the dim streetlight flickering over a stretch of cracked asphalt and pine shadows. I told myself I was being paranoid and kept going, but every few seconds I could feel the sound again. Not quite hearing it, more like sensing that someone was moving when I was. When I walked faster, the rhythm quickened. When I stopped, it stopped. By the time I reached my street again, I was practically jogging. I didn't even glance behind me when I reached my porch, just rushed inside, slammed the door, and locked it. I remember standing there in the dark, catching my breath. My heart was pounding so loud, it drowned out everything else. After a minute, I laughed at myself. "You're losing it, man." I made some tea, scrolled through my phone, and forgot about it. But the next night, it happened again. Same route, same stretch of road behind the reserve. And again, footsteps that weren't mine. Only this time, I didn't stop walking. I turned around immediately, shining my phone's flashlight down the path. Nothing. No one. Just empty road. I decided to record it. The third night, I went out deliberately with my phone camera on, flashlight aimed behind me. The footage showed nothing unusual, except for one thing I didn't notice until later. Around the 2:14 mark, when I passed the old no trespassing sign by the reserve gate, there was a faint reflection, like two eyes catching the light from my phone. They blinked, then vanished. I thought maybe it was an animal, a raccoon, or maybe a deer. But when I zoomed in, the spacing didn't look right. The eyes were too far apart, too high off the ground. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept replaying the sound of the gravel crunching, those pale glints behind the trees. 2 nights later, I stayed home. I told myself I was just being cautious, that it was probably nothing. But around 11:30, while brushing my teeth, I heard something outside my window. A click, like the sound of shoes tapping on concrete. When I looked outside, there was no one. Just my quiet street, empty driveways, and that same faint orange glow from the street lamp. I didn't walk for almost a week after that. But something strange started happening. I began finding things on my porch in the mornings. First, a single pine cone right at the door, then a folded piece of paper, blank except for dirt smudges, and one morning, a photo. It was an old Polaroid, faded, grainy, but it showed the road behind the Cedar Pines Reserve. And there, far in the background, was a dark figure standing in the middle of the path. At first, I thought it might be some kind of prank. Maybe a kid from the neighborhood trying to mess with me. But none of my neighbors even knew I walked that route at night. That night, I decided to check my security camera footage, the one facing my porch. And what I saw made my stomach twist. At 2:48 a.m., the motion sensor turned on. The feed showed a tall figure standing at the edge of the driveway, half in shadow. It didn't move for almost a full minute. Then it slowly stepped forward and laid something down on the porch. That something was the Polaroid. The moment I saw that figure on my security camera, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was anger. Someone was watching me, playing games. The next day, I printed a still image from the footage and took it to the Cedar Pines police station. Officer Duran, the night shift deputy, looked at the photo for maybe 10 seconds before sighing. "Probably a prank," he said. "Teenagers around here sneak out all the time. You said this was around 3 in the morning?" "Yeah," I said. "But look, he left something. A picture of the road I walk on." He shrugged. "Doesn't sound like a crime, sir. I'll send a patrol by your street tonight. But if it happens again, give us a call." I could tell from his tone he didn't believe me. That night, I couldn't stop watching the camera feed. Every small sound, wind, a raccoon, a passing car, made my chest tighten. Around 1:15 a.m., the motion sensor triggered again. The figure was back. This time, it was standing closer to the porch. I could make out more detail. It was tall, maybe 6 feet or a little over, wearing something dark like a hooded jacket. But what chilled me most was how it moved. It didn't walk like a normal person. Its steps were slow, uneven, almost like it was limping, dragging one foot. I grabbed my phone and called the police. While the dispatcher connected me, I watched the figure tilt its head toward the camera. Just a slight tilt, but deliberate, like it knew I was watching. Then, as the sirens started echoing in the distance, the figure turned and disappeared into the trees across the road. The officers arrived 10 minutes later. They checked the area, found footprints in the dirt near the driveway, but they faded before reaching the tree line. "Probably some junkie passing through," one officer said. "Keep your lights on. We'll add extra patrols." That night, I barely slept. Over the next few days, nothing happened. I even started convincing myself maybe it was some random drifter. But by the weekend, curiosity got the better of me. I needed to see where that person kept disappearing to. So on Sunday, I took a walk again, broad daylight this time. I followed my usual route down Birch Lane, then turned toward the road behind the nature reserve. The area looked different in daylight, less menacing, almost peaceful. I found the old "no trespassing" sign where the figure had always vanished near the trees. The fence was half collapsed, the lock on the gate rusted. Beyond it, the ground sloped into the woods. I don't know what I expected to find, maybe a campsite, maybe nothing. But about 20 feet in, I found something strange. A shoe, a single black mud-caked sneaker lying half buried in pine needles. Then, just a few feet away, an old sleeping bag, moldy, torn, like it had been there for months. Inside, I found empty food wrappers, an old flashlight, and something that made my stomach twist. Another Polaroid. It was of my house. The angle looked like it was taken from across the street, maybe through the trees, and standing on my porch, in the picture, was me. I dropped it immediately. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. I snapped a photo for proof and got the hell out of there. Back home, I locked every door and window. I reported what I found to Officer Duran again. This time, he took it more seriously. They sent 2 officers to search the reserve area, but came back with nothing. The sleeping bag and wrappers were gone by the time they got there. That's when I realized, whoever this was, they were still watching me. 3 nights later, I woke up to the sound of tapping on glass. It wasn't loud, more like fingernails brushing a window pane. I froze, staring at the ceiling. The tapping came again. I got out of bed quietly, grabbed my phone, and crept toward the living room. The blinds were half open, and outside, under the weak glow of the streetlight, stood the same figure, closer than ever. It was right by my front yard, maybe 10 feet from the window. The hood was up, face hidden in shadow. I raised my phone to record, but before I could hit the button, it lifted its head, and I swear, I could see the faint glint of a smile. I yelled, "Hey, get out of here!" It didn't move, just stared. Then slowly, it raised one hand and pressed a single finger to where its mouth would be. Shh. I stumbled backward, heart racing, fumbling to dial 911. When I looked again, the yard was empty. The police came again, but as always, nothing. No footprints, no evidence. Just me, my word, and another sleepless night. After that, I installed new cameras, one at the back, one facing the woods. But a few days later, both went offline at the same time, around 3 a.m. When I checked the recordings the next morning, the last thing captured was static. And just before the feed cut, a faint figure stepping out of the tree line. I decided to leave Cedar Pines for a few days. Stayed with my brother in Boulder. For 3 nights, nothing happened. But the moment I came back home, I felt it again. That pressure in the air. The sense that I wasn't alone. That night, I found muddy footprints by the back door. They led toward the house, but there were no prints leading away. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark with a baseball bat beside me, every light off, cameras recording. Around 3:10 a.m., the motion alert pinged. Someone was at the back door. I opened the feed, and my blood ran cold. The figure was standing inches from the camera, its hood lowered. For the first time, I saw its face. Pale, hollow eyes. Mud streaked across gray skin. It looked wrong, like something that used to be human. Then the screen went black. A second later, I heard the back door creak open. I ran for the front, but before I could reach it, a whisper came from the hallway behind me. "Why'd you stop walking?" I turned. Nothing. Just darkness. The police found my house empty the next morning, the door still locked from the inside. They said the cameras were damaged, footage erased. Only one photo remained on my phone, taken at 3:11 a.m. It showed my living room, and in the corner, blurred but clear enough to see, stood me. But my face was smiling. Story 2. The Whisper Tunnel. I used to think fear was just a reaction, something your brain invents when it doesn't understand what it sees. Now I know that sometimes fear is a warning. My name's Eric. I live in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio, and for the past 5 years, I've worked as a night custodian at a local community college. I usually clock out around 1 a.m., grab a coffee from the 24-hour gas station, and walk home, a little over 2 miles away. Most nights were quiet, a few cars, the sound of crickets, the hum of distant highway lights. My route took me through a pedestrian underpass that cut beneath the railway tracks. Locals called it the Whisper Tunnel because of how the wind echoed through it. It was short, maybe 50 feet, and covered in old graffiti, half-burned out lights flickering overhead. Creepy? Sure. But after dozens of late-night shifts, I stopped noticing it. Until one night in early March. The first whisper. It was raining that night. Cold, steady drizzle. My hood was up, hands deep in my pockets, trying to hurry through the tunnel before the next train passed. Halfway through, I heard something, faint, like a voice carried on the wind. "Eric!" I froze. It wasn't an echo. It was my name. I spun around. Nobody there. Just the sound of rain dripping in from the tunnel ceiling. I shook it off and kept walking, telling myself it was just the wind playing tricks. But as I reached the other side, I heard it again. Closer this time. Eric. My heart started pounding. I glanced over my shoulder, flashlight on. The tunnel was empty. I jogged the rest of the way home that night. Didn't even stop for coffee. The recordings. A few nights later, I told my coworker Dan about it. He laughed and said, "Man, that tunnel's been haunted since before we were born. Some drunk guy died there in the 80s. I rolled my eyes, but it stuck in my head. So the next night, I recorded my walk. I used my phone's voice recorder just for proof that it was nothing. For the first 2 minutes, it was normal. Footsteps, rain, the hum of the wind. Then, halfway through the tunnel, I heard it again. Only this time it came through on the recording. It wasn't just calling my name. It said, "Eric, don't look back." When I heard it later that night, I nearly dropped my phone. The voice was my own. Same pitch, same tone, just slower, distorted, like it was being dragged through static. I tried to convince myself it was a glitch, some weird echo feedback. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The next night, I avoided the tunnel completely, took the long route home, but around 12:45 a.m., as I passed the corner gas station, I heard something from the direction of the tracks, faint but distinct. "Eric!" That voice again. It was coming from the tunnel, the night. It followed me. By that point, I'd stopped sleeping properly. Every night, around the same time, I'd hear small noises outside my apartment, faint taps on the window, whispers through the vent. One night, I decided to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. I set up my phone by the window and hit record before going to bed. At 2:03 a.m., the audio picked up a whisper. "Eric, come back!" I felt sick. The voice was coming from outside my window, and it was identical to mine. I tried telling the police. They sent a patrol car to check the tunnel, but found nothing. The officer told me maybe someone was recording me as a prank. That sound carries weirdly near concrete. I wanted to believe that. Then, the next week, Dan didn't show up for work. He lived on the same street as me. The college called his phone, but no answer. 3 days later, they found his car abandoned near the underpass. His phone was still recording in the passenger seat. 6 hours of static and one clear whisper. Eric's next. The return. After that, I couldn't take it anymore. I told my supervisor I was taking time off. But the night before I planned to leave town, I had one last walk. It was stupid. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt. But around 12:30 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and headed back toward the tunnel. The night was dead quiet. No cars, no wind. Just the crunch of my boots on wet pavement. When I reached the underpass, the lights inside were completely out. The smell hit me first. Damp concrete, old rust, something like wet earth. "Hello?" I called, voice echoing down the tunnel. "Who's there?" Silence. I took one cautious step inside. My flashlight beam jittered across the graffiti, the walls slick with moisture. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Behind me. I spun around. The entrance was empty. But the steps kept coming, echoing closer, matching my pace. "Dan?" I whispered. "If this is some kind of..." Then I heard it, right next to my ear. "Eric!" The light flickered, and for half a second, I saw something in front of me. My own reflection, standing in the tunnel, pale, eyes dark, smiling. Then everything went black. The final recording. I woke up outside the tunnel just before dawn. My phone was gone, my hands covered in mud. I stumbled home shaking, head spinning. When I got inside, I went to charge my backup phone, but something was already recording. The voice memo app was open, still running. The last entry was from 3:17 a.m. It was 12 seconds long. At first, just breathing. Then, my voice, calm, steady. "It's not the tunnel. It's me." The recording ended with a faint laugh. My laugh. Since that night, I haven't walked home. I quit the job, moved to another town, but sometimes, late at night, when the wind passes through the trees, I hear it again. "Eric, don't look back." And I never do. Story 3. The Streetlight on Maple Avenue. I always thought night walks were peaceful. They gave me time to think, to breathe, to escape the endless hum of my apartment and the constant buzz of my phone. Living in a small town outside Minneapolis, Minnesota, I could walk for miles and see almost no one. Most nights, it was just me, the wind, and the occasional rustling of leaves. It was the first week of October when everything changed. That night, I left my apartment around 11:30 p.m., taking my usual route down Maple Avenue, a quiet, tree-lined street that curved slightly before hitting the old industrial park. Streetlights flickered every few hundred feet, casting long shadows across cracked sidewalks. I had my earbuds in, music low, headphones balancing the calm in the dark as I always did. About 15 minutes in, I noticed something odd. One of the streetlights ahead, near an abandoned warehouse, was on, brighter than the others. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that I could see a figure standing beneath it. A man, tall, still, hands in his pockets, staring down the street toward me. I slowed, thinking maybe it was just someone waiting for a ride. But as I got closer, I realized he wasn't moving at all, not even breathing. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but something, curiosity, fear, made me keep walking. The closer I got, the more I noticed how wrong he looked. His posture was too stiff, his face hidden in the shadows of a hood. but the outline of his body seemed off. Longer arms, maybe, or just my imagination. I tried to brush it off as fatigue. Maybe I'd been working too many late shifts. I passed under the streetlight and he didn't move. I looked straight at him, and that's when I realized he wasn't breathing at all. Not a rise or fall of his chest. Heart pounding, I quickened my pace. I didn't look back until I reached the intersection of Maple and Oak, nearly half a block away. That's when I saw him. He was behind me. Not running, not walking, just standing there, perfectly still on the sidewalk I just left. My stomach dropped. I tried to rationalize. Maybe a reflection? Shadows? Someone copying me as a prank? But something in the way he held himself made me stop thinking. I turned the corner onto Oak Street, hoping he'd stay behind. But the street was empty. The only sound was the wind in the trees and the distant hum of a car. I told myself I was imagining it. I even laughed quietly at myself. I should have gone straight home, locked the door, and stayed there. I didn't. The next night, I took the same route, Maple Avenue, same time. I felt drawn to it, a need to know. About 10 minutes in, I noticed the streetlight ahead, still flickering, still bright. And there he was, the figure, exactly where he had been the night before. Hands in his pockets, head down, staring at me. I stopped dead. My instinct screamed, "Run," but something compelled me to keep walking. As I passed under the light, I heard it, the faintest whisper, almost lost in the rustle of leaves. "Why do you keep walking here?" I froze. My heart skipped a beat. That voice, low, gravelly, was not human. I glanced back. The figure hadn't moved, but I could feel his gaze even without seeing him clearly. My pace quickened. I kept my head down, not daring to look directly. Halfway down the street, I pulled out my phone and started recording. I wanted proof, evidence, if something went wrong. The screen lit the sidewalk ahead, illuminating wet leaves and cracks in the pavement. That's when I heard it again. "Eric!" My name. I froze, staring at the phone screen. My battery was low, but I didn't care. I slowly raised my head. Nothing. Just the street, the trees, and the flickering light ahead. I reached my corner, the turn toward my apartment, and glanced back. He was gone. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was a prank. Maybe someone knew my routine. Maybe I was losing it. But over the next week, the encounters escalated. Every night, he appeared. Always the same spot under that streetlight. Always motionless. Always watching. Then came the scratches. The first morning, I noticed deep claw marks along my apartment doorframe. Fresh. Jagged. Not from a tree. Not from animals. My roommate Kevin insisted I was imagining it, that it was the wind shifting something in the frame, but I know what I saw. The next night, I brought a friend, Matt, along. He walked ahead of me, flashlight in hand. As we approached the streetlight, Matt stopped dead. "Do you see that?" he whispered. I did. The figure was standing there, but this time it moved. Slowly, deliberately, stepping forward toward the street, though still under the light, still unnervingly calm. Matt froze, then pulled me back. We should go. We sprinted the rest of the way to my apartment. Breathless, shaking, I locked the door and checked the security footage. Nothing. No figure, no movement under the streetlight. Only the faint glow of the light itself, flickering like a heartbeat. I started sleeping with the lights on. I avoided Maple Avenue. I even considered moving. But the thing is, You can't run from something that's already inside your head. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a tapping sound at my window. I ignored it at first. Maybe a branch, maybe a bird. But then it grew louder, more deliberate. I peeked through the blinds. The streetlight at the corner was on. And beneath it, he was there, hands in his pockets, head down, watching, waiting. The next morning, Kevin found my front door scratched again and taped to it. A Polaroid. It was me, walking towards that streetlight, flashlight in hand, and behind me, in the shadows, a faint outline, long, still, and watching. I haven't walked down Maple Avenue since. I don't leave my apartment after 10 p.m. anymore, but I hear the streetlight flicker through the window sometimes, and in the quietest moments, I swear I can hear him whisper, "Why do you keep walking here?" And I know, one night, I will.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe.